My sister set my house on fire. After I refused to transfer the deed to her, my parents begged me to drop the charges because she has a child, but the judge didn't agree. And watching her finally learn that actions have price tags was the only closure I ever got. Hey Reddit! So I saved for 7 years, bought my own house, fixed it up with my own hands, and thought, cool, life's finally stabilizing. My family took that as a personal challenge. Before we get to the part where everything literally goes up in flames, let me start from the beginning. My name's Lucian. I'm in my early 30s, and I work in operations management for a mid-sized company. It's not glamorous, but it's steady. Long hours, problem solving, keeping things from falling apart. That's pretty much how I've lived my whole life anyway, being the one who figures it out. In my family, that turned into me becoming the responsible one, which really meant the one nobody checked on because he'll be fine. My parents, Donald and Paris, always acted like I was born knowing what I was doing. If I struggled, they assumed I'd handle it. Meanwhile, my younger sister Alora was treated like a fragile collectible. Dust her off, keep her safe, don't let her get overwhelmed. Every decision she made, even the questionable ones, was praised as brave or stressful, or a lot for her to handle. I stopped expecting fairness years ago. Anyway, after 7 years of saving every spare cent, skipping vacations, taking on extra overtime whenever I could, I finally bought a house. Nothing crazy, just a 3-bedroom ranch on the edge of town. Most people would have turned away because it needed a lot of work, but I knew I could make something solid out of it if I was patient. The place had old paint peeling like thin paper, floors that looked like someone dragged metal furniture across them for a decade, and a kitchen with cabinets so warped I could see daylight through the seams. But it was mine. No roommates, no landlords, no shared walls. For the first time, I walked into a space and felt, not proud exactly, more like relieved. Like the years of eating cheap meals and fixing my own car might finally start meaning something. Renovating the house became my second full-time job. I'd work a 10-hour shift, come home, change shirts, and dive into whatever problem the house threw at me. I watched tutorial after tutorial until my eyes burned. Some nights I fell asleep on the floor with tools scattered around me. My shoulders ached for weeks. Weekends were for bigger projects, redoing the bathroom, scraping old linoleum, fixing the sagging deck. My friend Alonzo came by to help with the heavier stuff. He's been my best friend since high school and has seen enough of my family to understand why I'm the way I am. He kept joking that the house would be my proof of survival after years of being the background character in my own family. His words weren't wrong. When I finally invited my parents to see the progress, they acted proud in that muted way they do when they don't want to make a big deal out of something. My dad looked around and said, "You always were handy, son." Like it was obvious I'd renovate an entire house alone. My mom smiled and said it was nice. Not amazing, not impressive, just nice. They meant well, I know they did, but it felt more like they were checking a task off a list. If the same work had come from Alora, they would have thrown a party with decorations and speeches. Speaking of Alora, my parents still bring up her wedding like it was the crowning event of the decade. It's been years, but they talk about it constantly. The colors, the venue, how magical it was, how proud they were of their girl. It wasn't until much later that I realized how much they helped pay for it. I never got that kind of enthusiasm or support. When I hinted once that the down payment was rough on me, my parents said they wished they could help more equally, but Alora needed it at the time. Like need only counts when it's hers. But the thing is, I didn't buy the house to win points with anyone. I bought it because I wanted something that couldn't be taken away or reinterpreted into someone else's story. Still, when I stood outside and looked at the house after finishing the last of the major work, I expected to feel like part of something bigger. Instead, I just felt steady, solid, like I'd finally built something that belonged entirely to me. The problem was, I didn't realize yet that the people around me didn't see it that way. To me, it was a home. To my family, it was simply available. And that difference is where everything went wrong. I planned the housewarming to be small, 10, maybe 12 people tops. Just family, Alonzo, and 2 coworkers who helped me move the heavy stuff. Nothing fancy. I ordered a few pizzas, set out some folding chairs, because the living room furniture hadn't arrived yet, and figured it would be a simple afternoon where people saw the work I'd put in. Elora showed up 20 minutes early with 15 people I didn't know. They crowded through the front door like it was some open event. I barely had time to process it before Paris clapped her hands and said it was so sweet that Elora brought extra family energy. I opened my mouth to say something, but Donald beat me to it with, "It's family. Stop being weird, Lucian." More people means more love. It didn't feel like love. It felt like siege warfare. Alora strolled in like she was the host, not me. Her toddler son Bentley was on her hip, and she immediately let him run loose in the house. The strangers she brought wandered around, opening cabinets and complimenting things that didn't need compliments, like the hallway light switch. Her husband, Dario, trailed in last. He had that expression he always wears, chin slightly lifted, eyes scanning the room like he's evaluating a business investment he didn't pay into. He gave a slow nod, like he approved the layout, which annoyed me more than I expected. While people settled in, Alora started making comments that sounded like jokes, but didn't land like them. Wow, Lucian, 3 bedrooms. What exactly are you planning here? A bachelor compound? I forced a small smile. She kept going. It's kind of wild. One guy with all this space? What are you gonna do? Talk to the walls? Must be nice having no real responsibilities. A few people chuckled. I didn't. Donald joined in with his version of helpful commentary. Well, you do have extra space. Alora's just pointing out the obvious. Paris added her own version. I always said you'd grow into something like this when you finally settle down. Maybe it'll push you to think long term. I didn't know what to say to that. They made it sound like I'd bought a toy instead of a home. We started the house tour, which I hadn't wanted to do yet, but Alora insisted. She walked ahead of the group, opening doors like she was inspecting property she already owned. When she entered the first bedroom, she turned to her crowd and said, "This would be perfect for Bentley. Look at that natural light. He needs sunlight." I blinked, thinking she was kidding. She wasn't. Dario leaned against the doorframe, smirking like everything made perfect sense to him. He said, "Yeah, I can see this fitting our needs pretty well." Our needs. He said it like he'd already moved in. Alonzo stayed by my side the whole time. He watched the scene unfold with this tight expression. He wasn't wrong. Alora kept treating each room like she was shopping for a child she didn't bother to supervise. Bentley was dragging a plastic toy across the hardwood floors I spent 3 weekends sanding and sealing. Every scrape made my stomach drop. Nobody stopped him, not even Alora, who was too busy explaining how she'd arrange furniture in Bentley's future room. By the time we reached the kitchen, one of Alora's extra guests had taken it upon himself to open the fridge and ask if there were more drinks. I calmly told him to please stop going through my things. Instead of apologizing, he laughed and said, "Alora said this place was basically family property." I stood there, not sure if I misheard him. Alora shot me a look like I was being dramatic. "Relax, Lucian. Nobody cares about a fridge. It's just family." Alonzo muttered something under his breath that sounded like a warning. I almost asked him to repeat it. As the tour wrapped up, I realized I'd barely spoken during any of it. The whole event turned into Alora walking ahead, pointing, assigning, redesigning, and acting like the house was some kind of community resource I'd selfishly locked away. People had barely finished their pizza when Alora clapped her hands loud enough to cut every conversation in half. She stood in the center of my living room like she was about to host a seminar. I froze mid-sentence. Alonzo looked over from the couch, and even some of the strangers she brought quieted down. Alora smiled too wide. I didn't move. I wasn't giving her the stage, but she took it anyway. "I have a plan," she announced, lifting a manila folder from her oversized purse. I stepped closer and said, "A plan for what? This is my housewarming, not a strategy meeting." She ignored that, flipping open the folder and pulling out sheets of paper she'd printed. That alone pissed me off. She'd come prepared, premeditated, confident. "Since Bentley needs a yard and stability," she began, "and since you have all this unused space, Dario and I came up with a solution that benefits everyone." I crossed my arms and squared my shoulders, making it clear I wasn't going to entertain whatever this was. But she didn't back off. If anything, she straightened up like she expected applause. "You transfer the deed to us," she said, like she was asking for a cup of sugar. "It makes the most sense. A young family needs a home more than a single man does." The room went dead quiet. Dario stepped up beside her, hands in his pockets, like he was here to negotiate the merger of 2 companies. "Your mortgage isn't crazy," he said, nodding toward me. "It's doable, and we already mapped out how we'll use the rooms." I cut him off instantly. "You're talking like you own the place." Dario smiled like I was being dramatic. "We're being practical. You're a grown man with extra rooms. Your nephew actually needs the space." Alora placed another sheet on the coffee table. "Here's how it works. You transfer the house to us, and then you can rent the basement apartment we'll finish. It'll be perfect for you." The confidence in her voice made something hot crawl up the back of my neck. I stepped in closer, lowering my voice but not softening it. "I'm not renting a damn thing from either of you. I bought this house. I renovated every inch of it myself. Elora waved that off like it didn't matter. Yes, yes, you worked hard. But stability for a child is more important than your pride. Then the numbers came out. Elora pointed to a page with highlighted lines. The mortgage is, what, around $1,100 a month? I didn't answer. Dario stepped forward. We can contribute $400. Maybe $450 when things are good. You'd cover the rest since you make more. I laughed once, sharp and loud. You want me to give you my house and pay most of the mortgage? Elora didn't even blink. It's not giving. It's contributing to your family. You're choosing money over blood if you say no. I didn't hold back this time. You don't get to guilt trip me in my own living room. Elora tried to hold eye contact, but mine didn't budge. She looked away first. Across the room, Donald cleared his throat, stepping forward like he wanted to seem neutral. Let's just hear both sides. I cut him off. There aren't two sides. There's my house, and there's them trying to take it. Paris stepped in quickly, hands raised like she was some referee. Lucian, honey, stay calm. Your sister is just trying to solve a problem. No need to get so tense. I stared at her. She made up a problem, and her solution is stealing my home. Alonso stood up from the couch, arms crossed. This isn't a negotiation. This is theft with extra steps. Dario snorted and puffed up. You don't understand how housing law works. I read that if you have extra rooms and you're refusing to help family, a court can... Alonso laughed, sharp and humorless. That's not a law. That's something you saw online. Dario's eyes flicked like he'd been caught cheating on a test. It's a thing courts look at. Neglect. Stop! I snapped. Don't pretend you know anything about law. You downloaded one PDF and now you think you're a judge. Elora's face tightened. So you hate your nephew? That's what this is? You'd rather let him grow up in an apartment with no yard than support us? You're heartless. And I stepped closer, towering over her. Don't use your kid as a shield. This is about you wanting something I earned. The room stayed quiet for a beat, everyone waiting to see what I'd do next. Elora looked around like she expected someone to back her up. No one did. Not even the random guests she dragged in. I pointed at the door. All of you, get out. Now. Elora gasped like I'd slapped her. You're kicking out your own family? Yes, I said. Before you try stealing anything else. Dario muttered something under his breath but didn't try to argue. Donald looked stunned. Paris covered her mouth, but I didn't care. Alonso stepped beside me like a wall. I opened the door wider. Out! And one by one, they left. That was the moment the house stopped feeling safe. And it was only the beginning. The morning after I kicked everyone out, my phone started lighting up before I even got out of bed. At first, I thought it was Alonso checking in. No, it was Elora. A wall of messages filled the screen. Paragraphs, voice notes, screenshots of things I never said, and long guilt trips written like she was auditioning for some dramatic monologue. She didn't even try to hide the insults. You're not a real man if you can't help your own family. You only care about money. You're cold and selfish. Bentley deserves better than an uncle like you. She jumped between threatening me, crying digitally with sad emojis, and lecturing me about what it means to be a brother. There was no break between messages, just constant notifications. Then Dario started. His tone wasn't angry. It was smug, like he thought my reaction last night was just a minor setback. Let us know when you're ready to have a mature conversation. We can work out the rent terms when you calm down. I'll start looking at contractors for the basement. Don't worry, I'll pick affordable ones. He texted like he already owned the place. I blocked his number. He found another one to text me from. He even emailed me a list of suggested improvements he wanted me to start before they transitioned in. I didn't respond to either of them. By noon, Elora switched strategies and moved the fight public. She posted on social media about how I kicked out a mother and her baby in front of witnesses and how I value empty rooms more than family. People who didn't know the situation were commenting hearts and "Stay strong mama" under her posts. She even posted a couple photos from inside my house. In the comments, some of the people she brought tagged themselves and each other like it was a normal get-together instead of an ambush. I wasn't surprised she twisted it. I was surprised how fast people believed her. Around 3, Donald called. I expected him to start with something rational, at least acknowledging how insane the night before was. Instead, he sighed like I had caused all of it. Lucian, can't you just apologize and talk to your sister? She's hurting. She's not hurting, I said. She's angry she didn't get her way. He brushed that aside. You know how emotional she gets. Don't escalate it. Then Paris called. I sent both of them screenshots, proof, actual texts and voice messages where Elora called me heartless and Dario acted like he had already moved in. Paris still minimized it. Donald broke in with, "You're being prideful, son. You always get stuck in your ways. Just be the bigger person." I almost laughed. She tried to take my house. How am I the problem? Neither of them answered that. That night, Alonzo came over. I showed him every message. He didn't sugarcoat anything. "This is harassment," he said. "You need to document everything. Screenshots, timestamps, all of it. And upgrade your security. People like this don't stop just because they're embarrassed." Something in Alora's tone felt unstable, like she'd convinced herself she was owed something. So I installed exterior cameras the next morning. Doorbell cam, backyard cam, new locks, motion lights. Nothing fancy, but enough to let me sleep better. I stopped opening the door unless I checked the camera first. They recorded to the cloud, which made me feel a little safer, but most of what they captured at night was shape and motion, not clean faces. When Donald and Paris heard about the cameras, they acted like I'd bought attack dogs. "You're escalating," Donald said. "You're treating your sister like a criminal," Paris added. "This is unnecessary." "No," I said. "This is protection." They didn't accept that. Family gatherings changed fast. I stopped going, and the relatives who only knew Alora's version started acting like I had committed a crime. I got texts from cousins repeating her lines. "Family shouldn't fight over a house. You could have handled it differently." She just wants stability for her child. No one cared that the stability she wanted was built off the work I put in. Alone. Over years. Even worse, word spread that I exploded at the party, as if raising my voice after someone demanded ownership of my home was an unreasonable reaction. Dario told people I threatened him, which never happened. I didn't threaten to hurt him. I didn't make some violent promise like he told people. I shut him down and told him to get out. That's it. By the end of the week, it felt like half my family had turned into Alora's echo chamber. Alonzo stayed consistent, though. Every day he reminded me not to get pulled into emoji-filled traps or manipulative messages. He told me to save everything and stay calm externally. "People like them use chaos as leverage," he said. "Don't give them more." I tried. But every day felt like a new level of disrespect. A new accusation. A new attempt to make me feel guilty for not handing over something I built with my own hands. I had a work trip already planned for the following week. It should have been a simple 3-day conference out of state. Instead, I left with tension sitting heavy in my chest. As I locked the door behind me the morning I left, I stared back at the house. My house. For the first time since buying it, I didn't feel excited or proud when I looked at it. I felt uneasy. Something was coming, and I could feel it. I was halfway through the second day of my work trip when my phone rang with an unknown number. Normally, I ignore those, but something told me to pick up. A calm voice introduced himself as someone from the fire department in my town. He said my address, then said the words I never expected to hear. "There's been a fire at your property." For a second, everything around me disappeared. My laptop screen, the conference room, the notebook in front of me, gone. My first instinct wasn't even fear. It was disbelief. I asked if they had the wrong address. They didn't. I grabbed my bag, told my supervisor I had an emergency, and got in my car. The drive back was a blur. I can't even remember the roads. Just the pressure in my chest building the closer I got to home. Alonso called because one of my neighbors had his number from helping me with the deck. "They're saying your place is on fire," he said. "I'm heading over right now." When I finally pulled onto my street, I saw the flashing lights first. Fire trucks, police cars, a few neighbors standing outside in their jackets. And then I saw it. My house. Or what was left of it. The entire right side was blackened. The windows were blown out. Smoke was still drifting from the roof. My stomach dropped so hard I felt lightheaded. But what hit even harder was seeing Donald and Paris standing with 2 officers, talking fast and waving their hands like they were defending someone. Before I even spoke to anyone, Paris hurried up to me. "Lucian, honey, don't panic. These things happen." "These things?" I asked. My voice came out sharper than I intended. "My house is destroyed." Donald stepped in quickly. "We don't know what caused it yet, so don't go accusing anybody. Fires start accidentally all the time." I hadn't accused anyone. They were saying it before I even processed the scene. One of the fire investigators approached me. He introduced himself, asked if I was the owner, and started walking me through what they observed so far. His tone was professional but firm. They considered the fire suspicious. The point of origin looked intentional. There were signs someone had been near the side entrance recently. When they asked about cameras, I pulled up the clips. The footage showed a figure cutting across the edge of the yard toward the side entrance. Hood up, head down, Nothing you could positively ID from a grainy night clip. Then the feed dropped, like something disrupted the power or the router, and minutes later the fire started. Then Paris said, "Just remember our daughter lives nearby." She would never do anything like this. The investigator looked confused. "Ma'am, we didn't mention any suspects." That told me everything. The police asked to speak with me. They led me to the back of a cruiser where it was quieter. They asked about conflicts, recent threats, anyone who might have a motive. I opened my phone and showed them everything. Alora's long messages, Dario's smug texts, the public posts, even the housewarming chaos. "That's a lot," the officer said. "I know. Do you have the names of the people who were at the housewarming?" "Not all," I said. "She brought strangers, but she posted about it, and they tagged themselves in the comments. I screenshotted everything. They took photos of my phone screen, asked follow-up questions, and wrote down everything carefully. When I walked back toward the curb, I noticed Alora standing a few feet away with her arms crossed, eyes red like she'd been crying. She wasn't being questioned. She wasn't upset about the fire. She looked upset I was giving the police information. The moment she saw me, she went straight into performance mode. "I can't believe you're letting them think I had anything to do with this," she said, voice trembling. "I'm your sister. I'm a mother. Why would I ever hurt you?" I didn't say she did anything. I didn't imply it, but she responded like she was already accused. Dario stood beside her, trying to look composed. "You need to be careful what you're saying to officers," he told me. "You're emotional. You don't want to create a false version of events." I stared at him. I told them the truth. He swallowed hard. Just, don't let anger cloud your judgment. That was rich coming from a guy who tried to claim my house 2 weeks earlier. Alonzo finally arrived and came straight to my side. "You good?" he asked quietly. "No," I said. "Not even close." He stayed there, a solid presence, while Donald and Paris hovered on the other side of the yard. I overheard Donald telling an officer, "My daughter would never do this. She's a caring person. Whoever told you otherwise is exaggerating." The officer replied, "Sir, we're gathering facts. We haven't been told anything specific." Paris kept glancing at me like I was the one causing the fire by cooperating. When another investigator approached me to ask clarifying questions, Donald stepped forward like a defensive lawyer. "Do you need to keep asking him things? He's upset. Maybe save it for later." I said, "Dad, let them do their job." Paris looked at me like I betrayed her. The questioning continued. More evidence collected. More officers walking around the property. Every few minutes, someone would ask me another question about timeline or motive. Each time, Alora and Dario got more tense. Eventually, one officer pulled me aside and spoke quietly. "I'm not saying anything officially yet, but the pattern of damage and the timing lines up with someone who knew you weren't home." My jaw clenched. I didn't say a word. When I glanced back at my parents, they were huddled around Alora like they were comforting the victim, her. By the time the firefighters cleared out and the scene was secured, it was obvious. The evidence pointed toward Alora, and my parents weren't just refusing to see it, they were already preparing their defense. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. A week after the fire, the police called me early in the morning and asked me to come in. I sat in a small room with an investigator and a detective, both of them looking serious but calm. They laid out the findings. Accelerant traces near the back entrance, shoe prints matching a brand Alora wore, my cloud footage showing a hooded figure moving toward the side entrance before the feed dropped, a neighbor's camera catching her car near my street at a time she claimed she was home, and the history of threats leading up to the fire. When they said the words, "We're issuing charges," something in my chest tightened. Not satisfaction, not fear, just the weight of everything becoming real. Alora was arrested later that afternoon. I didn't hear the news from the police. I heard it from Donald, who called me in a panic, breathing hard like someone had died. "Lucian, what did you do?" he demanded. "They came to her house and took her away in handcuffs. She's married. She has a child." "I didn't do anything," I said. "They arrested her based on evidence." "You could have stopped it," he shouted. "You should have told them this was a misunderstanding. Families don't destroy each other like this." My jaw clenched. "She burned my house down." Paris cut into the line, crying loudly. "She made a mistake. She wasn't thinking clearly. She's under stress. You know how fragile she is. She has a baby. How could you let this happen to her? How could she do this to me?" I replied. Paris sobbed harder. "You can still fix it. You can retract your statements. Tell them you exaggerated. Clarify the timelines. Say you're unsure. Anything. Just help your sister before her whole life is ruined." I almost laughed at the absurdity. I told the truth. I'm not lying for anyone. Donald's voice dropped, cold and sharp. You are ruining this family. No, I said. Elora did that. He hung up. 2 hours later, Dario posted on social media, claiming she was unjustly targeted and betrayed by her own brother who hates mothers and doesn't understand family loyalty. His followers ate it up. He painted her as a victim of a cruel system and an even crueler sibling. Then Dario messaged me from a new number, trying to sound tough. You crossed the line, man. Fix this. Drop everything or things are gonna get bad. I ignored it. He sent another. I mean it. Don't underestimate me. Still ignored. That evening, I stepped out of my car in my driveway, what was left of it, when I heard someone walk up behind me fast. I turned just in time to see Dario rushing toward me, with his jaw clenched and fists balled. You think you're some kind of hero? He snapped. You think you're gonna win? You're nothing without family. Nothing. Before he could grab me, I shoved him backward. He stumbled but came right back, swinging sloppily. I sidestepped, grabbed his arm, and pinned him against the hood of his own car. He struggled, but he wasn't strong. He fought like a man who thought bluster was enough. You want to try that again? I said through my teeth. Alonzo pulled into the driveway right then and saw the whole thing. He got out, ready if needed, but he didn't have to lift a finger. I had Dario completely locked. Get him off your property and call the cops, Alonzo said. Dario tried one more weak shove, so I released him with a hard push that sent him stumbling several feet back. He tripped, caught himself, then pointed at me with a shaking hand. You'll regret this, he hissed. You're destroying our family. Your family destroyed itself, I said. Now get off my property. He scurried to his car and peeled out like a teenager who just lost a fight he started. Alonzo walked over. You okay? I'm fine, I said. He won't be back. You know he tried to put on a tough guy act, right? Alonzo said. You barely touched him. Guy fights like a wet sock. For the first time in weeks, I almost cracked a smile. The next few days were worse with Donald and Paris. They stopped pretending to be neutral. Every call was another attempt to twist my arm. Just tell the court you misunderstood. Think about Bentley. He needs his mother. Why are you doing this? Why are you being cruel? Each time I gave the same answer. I'm not lying. Paris cried every call. Donald yelled every call. Both blamed me for everything. But Alonzo stayed steady through all of it. You're not doing this to her, he kept reminding me. She did it to herself. She's responsible for her choices. You're just telling the truth. That's what kept me grounded. Facts don't change because people cry about them. As the case moved forward, my parents got colder. Shorter texts, shorter calls, more accusations. It didn't take long before the tone shifted from begging to resentment, like they hated me for not sacrificing myself for Elora the way they expected. One night, after another message from Paris calling me heartless, I finally understood something that should have been obvious long ago. I wasn't losing a sister. I was losing my parents, too. Court wasn't quick. It wasn't satisfying. It wasn't anything like what people imagine. It was paperwork, waiting rooms, phone calls, meetings with attorneys, and short hearings where everything felt heavier than the time allowed to discuss it. But eventually the case moved forward, and eventually the truth boxed Elora in from every angle. The plea deal came down midsummer. The charge she pled to wasn't the maximum they could have hit her with. Because the house was unoccupied and she had no prior record, the prosecutor offered a deal that guaranteed restitution and kept it out of a trial. The judge suspended jail time on the condition she paid, complied, and stayed clean, and warned her once on the record that one violation would flip it into a sentence. She took it. No dramatic speech, no final attempt to deny anything, no big emotional breakdown. Just a quiet admission to the charges because the evidence was too clear to fight. Guilty. Her sentence included probation, mandatory counseling, community service, and something that actually mattered: court-ordered restitution. She owed tens of thousands in damages. The number wasn't random. It was tied to the fire investigation, the insurance assessment, and the cost of the destruction she caused. The restitution was structured in a long-term payment plan she couldn't avoid: wage garnishment, tax return seizures, financial restrictions. It was the only time the court felt like it recognized what I'd lost. On top of that, insurance compensated me, and they didn't play around. They covered temporary housing, loss of personal property, structural rebuilding estimates, debris removal, and part of the replacement cost for items I'd bought during renovations. They didn't hand me one giant check. The early money covered temporary housing and immediate losses. The bigger portion came down to a choice: rebuild and claim full replacement value, or negotiate a final settlement and walk away. It wasn't easy to get through the paperwork, and I argued with an adjuster more than once, but the payout came through, enough to recover, not enough to forget. The remains of the house were inspected, photographed, documented, and then cleared. After the insurance settlement was finalized, and it was clear I wasn't rebuilding on that lot, I sold the land to a small development company. Let them deal with whatever came next. I didn't want to set foot on that property again. Meanwhile, child services got involved through the court automatically. Any parent who commits arson, especially against family, ends up flagged. They evaluated Bentley's living conditions, scheduled supervised visits, required parental classes. It was a mess, and none of it was my doing. But somehow, in my parents' eyes, it was all still on me. The day of Alora's sentencing, Donald and Paris stood outside the courthouse waiting for me. Paris had tears streaking down her face. Donald looked like he aged 10 years. Neither of them looked at me the way a parent looks at a son, more like someone who ruined their carefully arranged world. Paris stepped forward first. "Lucian, enough is enough," she said, voice shaking. "She's had her punishment. Please stop now." "Stop what?" I asked. "I'm done. The court handled it." "You didn't have to push it this far," she cried. "She's married. She has a child. He needs stability." I stared at her, stunned she could say that with a straight face. He needed stability before she set my house on fire. Paris flinched like I slapped her. Donald stepped in. "You got your compensation. You got your payout. You're starting over anyway. Just drop the hostility. Let her rebuild." "You think compensation fixes everything?" I asked. "You think money replaces the place I spent months rebuilding? Or the feeling of being hunted in my own family?" "You're being cruel," Paris whispered. "No," I said. "I'm being honest. Something you two haven't been with me in a long time." Their faces hardened. Not because they disagreed, but because they were finally hearing what they never wanted acknowledged. It didn't end there. They tried one more angle. "Do it for Bentley," Paris pleaded. "He needs his family." "He has family," I said. "Just not me." That was it. No yelling, no long speech, just the final truth. I walked away while they stood frozen on the courthouse steps. That night, I blocked Alora, Dario, and then, after sitting with it long enough, Donald and Paris. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't anger. It was survival. You can't keep people in your life who would watch your home burn and then blame you for the smoke. 2 months after the court case closed, the last part of the insurance settlement finished processing. I had enough to either rebuild or relocate. I chose neither of those old paths. Instead, I took a job offer from a branch of my company 3 states away. Better pay, better weather, better distance. I packed what little I had left, most of my belongings were gone in the fire, and moved into a clean, quiet apartment with new walls that didn't carry old echoes. Unloading the last box, Alonzo clapped me on the back. "Feels like the first normal chapter you've had in a long time," he said. He was right. There was no celebration, no victory lap, no dramatic rebirth. Just quiet. The kind of quiet a man notices only after years of noise he thought he had to tolerate. I found a rhythm again. Work, sleep, small routines that involved my life and no one else's demands. The first time I cooked in the new kitchen, I didn't think about who might knock on my door or who might demand something from me. Months later, sitting on my new couch, I thought about something that had stuck with me my entire life. The label my family always put on me, the strong one. People think that's praise. It isn't. Being the strong one was just their excuse to take from me and assume I'd never break, never complain, never need anything in return. Now I'm not their strong one anymore. I'm just a man living in peace, far away from people who mistook my stability for something they could drain. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.